Let's speak to Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri, Director of the US and Americas Program at the International Affairs think tank Chatham House, and also to Democratic strategist and political commentator Calvin Dark, who joins us. Good to see you both. Leslie, we know that voters are not thrilled at the prospect of President Biden running again. The opinion polls have showed that already. Is it indeed his age that you think is the greatest obstacle at the moment?
Well, I think that he has had approval ratings that haven't been high, and that's been fairly consistent. And some of that's certainly his age. Some of that is the fact that America is very divided. Even within the Democratic Party, there are very significant divisions. Some who wish to have a president that's more progressive than they think Joe Biden is. Some who would like a president that is perhaps more conservative. And so there's a lot of internal divisions within the party. And this is a president that has not only had to speak to a very divided country. Remember, when he came into office, he was handing out vaccines. He was dealing with the pandemic. It's been an extraordinary period of governance, but just simply from the perspective of a divided America, a polarized society, and his own political party and also the Republicans being internally divided. That is a context in which it would be very difficult for most presidents to be broadly popular, almost by definition.
Calvin, if we just stay on the issue of his age, though, because that is one of the things that when people are polled, they raise as a concern. What does he need to do to convince voters that he's got the vitality and the energy to keep running the country?
Well, I think the best thing that President Biden can do is to take the issue on directly. Because one thing we know, you can change and spin a lot of things, but his age is something he can't change, and he only gets older every day. So the worst thing he can do is to ignore it or to pretend that that's not a valid concern from voters. If he takes it on directly and then shows that he has what it takes to not just run for president in a post-COVID era, but to also be president of the United States at the same time.
Leslie, what do you think the issues will be that he'll choose to address during campaigning? And do you think that he can portray himself as being the unifying figure still that the country needs?
Yeah, I think this is a president, we've seen it, who is going to campaign on the basis that he wants to get the job done, that he's begun what is a very significant transformation of the role of the American government in investing at home in the creation of jobs and a climate-friendly transition, in creating new infrastructure, and in really taking on the China challenge. And I think he wants to demonstrate that it's important that now that he's gotten a lot of legislation passed, that he really sees this through at the level of implementation, that this is a very significant moment on the international stage. America is supporting Ukraine together with its NATO allies and partners. And so I think really, again, driving down that notion that it's very important not to have a one-term president who's stopped in his tracks, especially at a time where it's only really in the last year that America has come through the pandemic that it's very important. And I think to speak to what we just heard, demonstrating that he has which he does, a very expert and distinguished set of people in the highest levels of government that he has appointed, many still to be confirmed, but he's got an extraordinary cabinet, and demonstrating that he is leading a team of people, many of who are much younger but have a great deal of experience, I think will be absolutely critical to his success.
Yeah, Calvin, let's get the job done was a message that came across many times when you look at the campaign video. That's clearly as well to do with the economy, but there were also shots of campaigners holding up banners about abortion. How much do you think other issues are going to also play a role in the campaigning and actually, end up being close to as important as the economy, which has always been one of the number one things that people vote on?
Yes, and I expect that the economy will be the number one issue. As you said, it always is. But I think in this election for 2024, there are some issues that, Biden made some very serious promises for in 2020. Some of them he's begun to deliver on, some of them he hasn't. And I think that the issue of abortion is one where his continued advocacy for women's reproductive rights is going to be important. I think further action on gun violence is going to be something voters are going to think about. That is one of the legislative wins that Biden had, but he needs to go further. Also, we have to remember that there are all of these attacks, as he mentioned in the video, on our freedoms, the MAGA wing, as he called it. And so I think that that combined with the economy, voters will get the message that he made promises. He's made decent progress in accomplishing them, and he wants and thinks he deserves a chance to finish the job.
Calvin, would you be worried, and would strategists be worried, though, in general, about the lack of enthusiasm there seems to be around President Biden, that they do have to keep trying to mobilize people, and there's just not that excitement around him? And when you have, like, the Wall Street Journal editorial board coming up and saying, we don't think he should run again, he's obviously in decline, they said, and this would be a historic mistake. There is that feeling out there. Would you be worried about that as a strategist?
No, I'm not worried about it because I believe you're absolutely correct if we take that in a vacuum. But I believe if we look at Biden compared to the alternative, one of Biden's many used lines is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. When voters, Democrats, Republicans, and independents see that their alternative is likely Republican nominee Donald Trump, then the choice becomes a lot clearer. So, of course, there are people that want new ideas, a younger candidate, but when reality hits that the alternative is Donald Trump or potentially someone like him, Biden looks a lot more like a better option.
Leslie, can I ask you to explain sort of what happens now in this next period when when presidents say they're going to run again? Because clearly Republicans are going to be wanting to deny him any kind of victory, even if it's small.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this signals, that America moving headstrong into an electoral season and everything. But, to be fair, everything becoming political. But to be fair, America has been so intensely politicized domestically in Washington, but also far beyond, that it might not look so different, certainly when it comes to the perspective of those of us watching America from outside the United States. And much will come down to how this president continues to govern. He's been very good in the face of some very intense politics, not least former President Donald Trump being indicted, at just carrying on daily work. This is something that he's tried to signal to the American people, that even in the midst of domestic political small politics, big politics, that he's really focused on governance and governing. But I think the other thing, to go to this question of issues that are going to come up, immigration is something that we haven't discussed, and that's clearly going to become a rallying point for the Republican Party. That has the president been tough enough on the southern border? Has he kept immigrants who they claim are criminals outside of the United States? Will he be losing jobs to people coming into the country and unfairly stealing them? That sort of rhetorical play is bound to get a lot of traction in the Republican Party as we go forward. And again, this is a president who struggled to devise a strong immigration policy, not easy. And this will be an area where he's going to have to put place some of his attention.
Calvin, can I ask you about Kamala Harris? What do you think she continues to bring to the table?
Well, I think she continues to bring a lot of her experience and, her persona. Let's remember that she was a presidential candidate before she joined Joe Biden's ticket. I think one thing to keep in mind is I don't think she's gotten the exposure for the American people to see what she's doing in the first part of Biden's term. I think some of that was logistic because, before the Democrats only had one vote in the Senate for majority, so she had to stay in Washington a lot because she was the tie-breaking vote. But I think what we'll see for the term going forward is we'll see more about what she's doing on women's reproductive rights, on gun violence, and on immigration. Because I think when Americans see her working and doing those things more regularly, they'll have more faith and confidence that it might be Kamala Harris in 2028.
Calvin Dark, Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri, thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We have some